Hello and welcome to Remix Your Marriage.
We are back.
We are back,
Been
and
gone a little while.
well, I'm Lyndon,
Oh, and I'm Vanessa.
and happy New Year
Happy
to all.
New Year.
Hope you guys had a great time. We had to take a little bit of a break
I
because we
wanna-
had family over.
Yes, but I want to share what we're doing right now.
Okay.
We're on a date week.
Yes.
So those parents or couples that you have young kids and it's a struggle just to get a date night, just know there's hope.
Yeah,
in
we
the
are
future.
we are out of town in a hotel recording, and we are excited to come back.
Yes. You don't want to talk about our date week?
Oh, go ahead.
No, my point is that it was so hard to find a babysitter even when we wanted to go away for the weekend. Remember how tough that was?
Yeah.
One of the great things about having adult kids is we didn't have to get a babysitter.
Yeah,
We just up and left. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, they-
just us.
they babysit each other, and
Mhm.
sometimes it turns into a little argument, but that's okay.
They're going to handle themselves.
Yes.
And we took off. So it's really nice. I feel like it's perfect to start our new year. We're calling this the Mamba year. Well, we didn't call it the Mamba year.
A lot of people call it the mom.
Yeah. It's 2024.
2024. So January 3rd, 2024, we are actually in Fresno, California, and we are excited to bring you episode number 4.
Yes.
So, as I say every episode, if you haven't listened to the previous ones, please listen to the previous episodes to
These
really,
aren't going to really make sense.
to get to understand what's happening here. So,
With that. And so just for, your listening ears around, I mean, we're not going to go too in depth yet.
yeah, we're not getting all freaky and
We're
stuff.
not gonna- but we are going to talk about it. So just
You have been warned.
You've been warned.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah,
So
so,
we got married.
so today in
Mhm.
this episode, we're going to talk about getting married and
When we got married, not getting married.
when we got married.
Mhm.
And what my expectation was for marriage, what
Mhm.
your expectation was for marriage, that we never discussed, and we had completely different ideas of what our marriage was going to look like.
And again, just a reminder, this is leading into episode 5 and why what happened. Many factors went into that. And so for me, we had gotten married. We went to Vegas. I think we had already mentioned that.
Yes.
Silver Bell Chapel. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say.
Yeah.
And then we had a honeymoon in Vegas, which I don't really think we had a honeymoon, but anyways. And we came back and we had our 2-year-old son, and I just expected, oh, we're married now. I really felt like I was going to feel different. I had a lot of expectations for my husband and who he was going to be in my eyes and what the wife I was going to be. And I look back now and I realized that I was very child-centered. I
Yes.
was focused on raising my son the best way that I could because my biggest fear was that he was going to end up like me. And I just wanted him to know he was cared for, loved for. And then we decided we wanted to have Bella.
Yes.
So I have to say, Bella feels like she's not mentioned enough in our podcast.
Because she wasn't born yet. We haven't got to her yet.
You know, it's so funny. This is the one we don't want them to listen to.
Yeah. So I remember that you had gotten saved
Mhm.
while you were pregnant. And once our child was born, you were really, really into God. And I'm choosing my words carefully, but you were really into it. And I was kind of pretending that I was really into it because I wanted.
Say it. I was super religious. I was more focused on the religion than the relationship.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we got married, you had told me we're living together
Mhm.
and I don't think we should have sex anymore until we get married.
Yeah.
And in my brain, I'm like, but why is one sin not as bad as the other? I mean, if that's the case, then we shouldn't even be living with each other. But being young and dumb, and I'm just like, I'm just going to accept this because when we get married, it is going to be on.
Can I backtrack a little bit though?
We can keep backtracking.
We had sex obviously at a young age.
Yeah.
I was 16 or 15. I think I was 15. Yeah, I was 15. And you were 16. And I don't think I was ever a sexual person. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't think I ever really, not that I didn't like it. I think I always had this guilt
Yeah.
behind it because I always had this foundation from the time I can remember. I had been involved in church and going to church. And even though I had walked away for so long from from, I would think, from the time my dad died until 18, 19 years old. So when I came back, I think there was always this guilt. So that surprises me when you say you expected that, because it wasn't like I was I don't know.
Well, the reason is because, you know, it was happening a lot before you got pregnant, it was happening a lot. So
Oh, okay.
I just figured, once our son was born and now
Yeah.
we're living together, we're just going to continue on that path
Yeah.
to,
And I had so much guilt behind it.
yeah. And at the time I didn't know.
Hmm.
All I knew is how you were before pregnancy and had an expectation that that's the way it's always going to be.
Yeah.
We all know the stereotypes of wives not wanting to have sex and the husband practically begging for it. But I'm like, that is not you,
Yeah.
because being younger, everything that's going on with us and having fun and
Yeah.
doing stuff, So anyhow, that's what I thought was going to happen. I didn't think you were going to change at all.
Yeah. There was a constant battle with me with trying to be this perfect Christian mom, wife that doesn't exist, by the way. Spoiler alert. Oh,
Yeah,
spoiler alert. That should be the name of our podcast, man.
I know.
So that doesn't, I found out that's impossible, but that's what I was trying to strive. There's also a lot of fear going into marriage, parenting. I feel like fear was like a driving force for me in everything, because when we had our son, I don't know if we said this on the last podcast, but we had the Northridge earthquake. You did say it.
Yeah.
We had the Northridge earthquake. So then I had this fear of him. Like, that's why he slept in the bed with us too,
Yes.
because I had a fear, because that was at 4:30 in the morning out of nowhere. It was
He was 6 days
he
old.
was 6 days old.
Yeah.
So then in my head, oh my God, anything could happen at any moment. So I need
Yeah.
him by my side right now, like every minute. So kids sleeping in the bed, not good for a
Correct.
marriage. I'm
Yes.
going to say that, and I don't care. You can fight me on that. That was tough on our marriage.
Yeah. It
Because
was.
our bed wasn't our bed. It
Yes.
was all of our beds a kid.
Yeah. And you mean like at an older age. You're not talking about like a baby, are you? Or
No,
are
your
you?
baby, yeah. We should think of the difference between Lyndon when we were learning how to be married when we were learning how to be married, and then to Sophia, the difference
Yeah, I guess.
yeah, like it was,
Sophia never slept in the bed with us.
yeah, exactly.
And she's a much better child than us. I kid.
Okay. But anyway, so yeah, I think I had expectations. None of it had to do with sex. It's just so odd the way that my brain was. And
None of it had to do with sex, and in my brain, everything
had to do with
had to
sex.
do with sex. Yeah.
And we were not talking to each other about this. We
No.
had expectations, but neither one of us knew our expectations for each other. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to church every Sunday. I'm going to raise this perfect child. I, lived in the suburbs. I wanted everything. I wanted to make sure my kids were always cared for, always knew they were loved. I was always there for them. And Lyndon would work long, long, horrible hours, awful hours. Like, how many hours?
Well, I was in the car business, so I was working 60, 70s, sometimes 80-hour weeks.
Yeah.
So I wasn't home a lot. And
So we had decided, well, I didn't even go into that, but we decided we wanted another child. We had Bella, and Bella was totally planned. And then after that, long story, we'll probably go into it like later on, but I don't want to go into it because it's years after. Then we have Sophia. We have the 3 kids. We are finally, Lyndon is making really good money at the car business, too much money for 20-something-year-olds to have with no guidance.
I remember thinking when we got home from Vegas that, so we had gone on this hiatus of not really having sex because you decided we're not going to have sex till we're married. So I remember getting back from Vegas and thinking honeymoon's over, but the honeymoon's not over. That first 2 years, it's going to be on and popping. So my expectation was very much,
Gosh.
very much this. That's what I thought. I thought it was going to be a sex party daily.
Wow, a sex party.
Yeah, yeah.
You thought there would be a party with sex?
You and I, but yes,
Wow.
that was my expectations. And don't ask me where I got that from. Partially from our history, but that's just what I expected. I didn't think kids were going to change anything. I didn't think having our son was going to change anything in our sex life. And I think that's where the disconnect started for me. So in my mind, I'm like Christianity religion, no sex.
Yeah.
So I started to have a really sour taste in my mouth about religion, about
Yeah.
Christianity, because I felt like it was affecting my marriage, and I thought it was supposed to strengthen my marriage.
Hmm.
So I was going through the motions of going to church, with you, and going to
Yeah.
church with our son, and nothing that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I didn't because I was really upset with with our whole situation, but
Yeah.
I just thought it was going to get better.
Yeah.
And then of course I got to a point where I'm like, okay, so this is just what it is. Like I hear all the time about marriages and they kind of just get stale, and that whole term, that whole phrase, old married couple, and I just kind of thought, all right, so this is just what it is, and I have to sit in this, and this is just what my life is going to be.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I want to stop right here real quick. And this is some crucial marriage advice to those of you who are listening that are newly married or you're going through your struggles right now. This is the importance of surrounding yourself with healthy married couples, with surrounding yourself with people that you can go to about things like this. Because in my brain, in my head, in the way that maybe it's just what I wanted to see, I thought my husband is a good Christian man. He's leading, but deep inside, I knew like certain actions and certain ways he was acting towards church. And I just could feel that he wasn't having that same, I wouldn't even say relationship. He wasn't having the same views as I was. And now, but later, years later, we talked about it. In all honesty, making your husband, which is pretty much what I was doing, making your husband go to church, making your husband do all the churchy things, um, is not is not going to be positive for your marriage. That is something that when I married Lyndon, when I met Lyndon, he was not a Christian. So how do I expect him to all of a sudden feel all the same things that I feel once we have a baby? Like I expected him to just change overnight and go, okay, we're Christians now and just listen to me and do what everything, but he wasn't feeling it. But that little voice that was telling me, I know he's not feeling this, I would just push it away, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And for me, the days that I did miss church, like there were some days where I was actually able to go, but I just didn't go. And you coming home and telling me like, you missed out, you're not going to believe what the pastor said, da da da, and you need to get. So then I'm like, okay, so this Christianity thing, not only am I not connected, but now it's making my wife angry with me. And I didn't even do anything wrong. I just didn't go
Yeah.
to church.
You
So
would remember that.
yeah, so it was again, you don't remember it because I didn't talk to you about it. This was a
Mhm.
whole internal struggle that I really should have been talking to someone about, but I just didn't.
So in all reality, I'm sure there's couples out there that can relate with this. Who's maybe it's a wife that has been trying to get her husband to church, or her husband comes to church with her, and she's not feeling. You really have to. The best advice that I could give you is just pray for your spouse. You don't tell them what to do. Don't tell them that you're disappointed in them. That never ever helps. It's just going to push them away more. And that was the biggest mistake that I did. Is I expected so much out of Lyndon just because something inside of me was changing, doesn't mean that it was happening to him. And I need to just back away and grow within myself instead of focusing so much on how Lyndon was growing, the importance of going to the right church. Not that there was anything wrong with the church I was going to before. So this is when things change for me when it comes to sex. So I am living this suburban life. I think we have two kids at the time. We're going back and forth on timelines because it doesn't really matter. Don't you hate it when people, sorry, sidebar, don't you hate it when people are like, and I feel like I'm doing that a lot when they're like, it was a Monday. Oh, no, it was a Tuesday. Oh, wait, no, it was, because none of that matters.
I love that.
I hate that. And I feel like I'm doing that.
It's all good.
So none of that matters. Plus, this was so many years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, our kids are all in their 20s now. So my memory is not like, I cannot remember everything. A bit of advice. If you're looking for a church, you have to find a church, or if you want your spouse to go to church, you need to find a church that your spouse feels included and feels good about too. And that's another thing I did. I was doing this all on my own. And now that I'm thinking about it, I believe it's because I watched my mom do all the things on her own. I watched her find her church on her own. She did all the things without my dad. And that's because she had to, so I think I was just kind of in that mode,
Yeah.
And I didn't think about you. I'm like, well, this church is in a nice part of town and everybody goes here. So this is the church we go to,
And I'll just be forward. what you were saying was I needed to feel more included. And we went to a church that there wasn't a whole lot of minorities.
Yeah.
So after leaving that church and going to a church where um, it was very inclusive,
Hmm.
the second I walked in, I was like, oh, okay, so this already feels better.
Yeah.
So there was nothing
I don't
wrong.
think that's where it's at though.
What do
I'm
you
gonna
mean?
tell you that when we went to the new church, so then the different church we went to, it was, and the reason we keep talking about church is because the power in community and how it changed my life and the power of just being around the right people. So I go to this new church, go with my mom. You don't come with me for like a month or something. I think I started going for a month and I was telling him, like, I think this church is pretty cool and I think you're going to like it. And then you started coming with me.
Yes.
Within 4 months of going, we invited our friends to go with us, and there was a marriage retreat. The marriage retreat was a game changer,
The marriage retreat to me sounded like the worst time ever.
and for me, sounded like the best
So
time.
I'm thinking I'm gonna go to some hotel with 20 other couples and we're gonna sit in a circle and hold hands and talk about marriage. I have
Why would we hold hands
absolutely
and talk about marriage?
because I
So
didn't
weird.
know.
Okay.
I watched television. I didn't
Okay.
know. I had no interest in going on this marriage retreat.
Yes. So you had no interest in going. I think that what helped you going was that our friends went with us that had just started going to the church as well.
That was a
That
big
was,
push.
you knew he would be with you. So
And I'm like, we can be bad together. Him and I will just go do our own thing.
and I really want you to know, I really believe that my husband is like in on all of this. Like he's good with this because no communication. He would not tell me, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't want to do this. He was just like, okay, I'm just going to kind of go along with whatever you want to do. So we go to this marriage retreat, and yeah, I think Lynn's expecting the worst. We had the best time. First of all, it was a country western theme. We are the opposite of country western. Sorry for you country people out there. But we are the opposite of that. On Saturday night, there's like a dinner. By Saturday night, Lyndon and Ray
We're wearing cowboy hats
wearing cowboy hats
and we're
just having the best
and
time.
we're just staring at each other, laughing at each other.
So the reason is because we sit down, we have a session, but everyone was having so much fun. Everyone was making fun of each other. That's where we kind of come from. We come from a group of friends where we kind of bag on each other. We have a good time. It wasn't the kind of Christian people that I grew up with.
It didn't feel like church to me.
It didn't feel like church. It felt like fun and friends. And isn't that like what it should be? Like we should
Well,
be having fun.
that's
Yeah,
what it is now. But yeah, but
it
back
is that
then,
now.
I didn't think that was a possibility. I thought,
Yeah.
you've been going to church for a while now, and you come home upset with me, and like I was like, church is not fun.
Yeah.
So when this was happening, me and my friend Ray, we were very thrown off by what the
Yeah.
heck is going on here.
And it was so much fun. And the pastor, big, huge shout out to Pastor Gary. You'll be hearing more about him later.
Next episode.
But yes, next episode. And the whole team. And it was life altering. But the biggest thing was the women, we had like a separate women's group and they talked about sex. Like for me, I'm like, what the heck? We're in church and they're talking about sex.
Yeah.
And they talked about the importance of having sex, the importance of that time with your spouse, the importance of making time. And it completely blew my mind. I think that my jaw was dropped the entire time because I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't think that sex was important. I know I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but I believe that I still thought that sex was really only to have children. And I think that's because that's kind of what I was taught. I thought, and I looked at it like it was dirty. And then I'm looking at these women who love Jesus and they're just love their husbands and they're saying sex is from God. Sex is something that you need to enjoy with your husband. It's the one thing you two get to do together that separates you from being roommates.
Yes. So of course, me after that marriage retreat, I was so excited that was even a possibility.
Oh my
So
God.
of course, I was like, hey. I can't help myself. So I was so excited after this marriage retreat because I was like, now it's coming from God. Now God is so if no one else can get through to you, God is saying, you need to have sex with your husband.
Mhm.
So I thought everything was going to change.
Yeah.
But the only thing that really changed was your perception and your understanding, in my
Mhm.
opinion, at that time.
Mhm.
Your perception and understanding of the importance of it changed, but the act still wasn't happening.
Yeah, it still wasn't, but in my head, I was like thinking that it was, you know? I don't really remember a lot of that time in
I
the
remember it
marriage.
every single day.
Do you really?
No.
Okay. We learned about the five love languages and the importance, things that me and Lennon had never talked about. So on that point, when me and Lennon are talking, and of course, you know, it's the marriage retreat, so of course we're having sex. I'm thinking we have a great marriage. Like my husband is communicating with me, he's open, and really, I'm going to be honest, I didn't think like that he was wanting to have sex all the time because we look back now and we've had this conversation. I'm just going to be very transparent. I think that something was going on with me hormonal. We later on found I had a lot of hormonal issues going on
Right.
that I didn't desire it as much. But my problem was is that I was so selfish in my thinking going, well, if I don't feel like it, then we're just not going to, not thinking that my husband needed that from me, you know? That sounded bad. Not needed that from me. You needed that time with me. We needed that
Yeah,
time together.
it's just an important time of connection.
An important time of connection. So I would just let weeks, I would let months go by and not really think about it, and then get so offended if he would give me an attitude or treat me kind of differently, be very cold to me. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I know it's because we haven't had sex. I know it is. But we would get in humongous fights about it. But when I say huge fights, silent treatment. Lennon would leave. I would call him, text him, and you wouldn't answer me back. And I remember calling my best friend and saying, I don't know what's on. And she would know immediately. She's like, well, are you guys having sex? She would know
Yeah.
immediately that that was the reason. And me, I'm like, gosh, why is this such a big deal to him? Like, I really didn't understand it. Is that not crazy? I'm going to these marriage retreats and I'm still just not getting it, you
Right.
know?
For me, like my mood. So the fighting was because I was so short tempered with you. So something that you would normally say to me that wasn't a big deal, because we weren't having sex, I was like, she doesn't even deserve my conversation. You know, I'm not even going to respond to that. I'm not even going to give her a kiss goodbye. I'm not going to. So I really started pulling away
Mhm.
because I felt very undesired. I started hearing, you know, not I started hearing, I was hearing from my pastors that, you know, him and his wife are having sex all the time, and all these people that are the head of the church, and this church is what we're following in this relationship and Christianity. This is what we're following. So these people are doing it, and my wife and I still aren't. So obviously it's me. It has to be me, because
Mhm.
before I wasn't going to church. Now I'm deeply involved in the church and I'm loving it, and it's still not happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just felt like it had to be me.
Yeah. And I think that I look back at it now and know that I didn't have a desire for it. I just wasn't feeling it and I wasn't focused on you. I was focused more on raising the kids. So I was doing a lot of pretending, yeah, my marriage is great. My marriage is perfect. My husband, you know, has a great job. We have these kids who are doing so well, so sweet, so well behaved. I'm a stay-at-home mom. Like everything is so great. It's just that one little thing, but is it in the back of my head? I'm like, it's really not that big of a deal,
Yeah, it's not
you
that
know?
important.
Because, and then this is another thing I have learned if it's a big deal to you, which let me just say, I am I am I understand the importance of sex. I enjoy sex. It is something that we take priority in now, but it's not something that we have to think about so much anymore because it's just something we both want to do. So even though in the back of my head it's so funny, I remember thinking, okay, this is when I thought I was healthy in my marriage. I'm like, okay, having sex, that's something that needs to be on my to-do list. So that is laundry, picking the kids up from school, homework, baths. Okay, I have to make sure I have sex.
So in the meantime, just like right before we got married, I started going out with the guys that I worked with, and same conversations I was having before. Hey, what's going to happen when you get home? She's going to be asleep. She's not going to wake up for you. So you're going to go home and watch TV, or going to go out with us. So I started going out with them more and more. And that set me on a path to destruction. The not having sex part was was very hard. But I was going through my own things and making my own bad decisions, you know. So I don't want you to feel in any way that everything is on your shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
because really 90%, 95% of this is on my shoulders,
Yeah.
and me making bad decisions and me not communicating with you
Mm-hmm.
and me holding everything in and deciding that I'm going to do what I want to do on my own terms, which was a huge mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember I'm starting to really get into church, and I'm really loving church, and I'm loving our pastor. You know, the marriage retreats were great and all the other stuff we're doing. And then his
We did
sermons.
love our church.
Yeah.
We did have so much fun.
Yeah.
I also want to add in, and I know you're about to. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we did have so much fun at that church, and we met great people, and we had great friends, and we had
Yeah.
great couples around us. The reason that Lyndon started to be able to communicate, and I started to be able to communicate better, was because of the people surrounding us. So I really don't want it to seem like this was like this horrible 12, this is 12 years
Yeah.
of this, awful sexless marriage, and we hated each other. But, Lennon had expectations of me. I had an expectation of a husband who came home and picked up the kids and changed diapers and takes baths and gave them a bath. And so I'd be able to go upstairs and relax or go with I expected so many, we had so many different fantasies.
So many unrealistic expectations.
The importance of premarital counseling, by the way. Anyways.
Yeah. And and before we finish, I do want to say, raising our kids during that time, going into Disneyland and all that. I mean, I had the best time with my family. I had the best time with, I know you don't like hearing this, but during that time, I just felt like we were really good friends, and I had a lot of fun. I know. I had a lot of fun with you. We laughed a lot. We raised we had a good time. There was just that one piece missing that, I was really having trouble with.
Yeah.
But,
and that's the reality of the situation. This is what happens sometimes in marriage, is when two couples argue or trying to discuss something. The dangerous thing that can happen is when a spouse can become defensive. You really have to let that wall down and take that down. I could get really defensive and go, no, but don't you remember this? Don't you remember when we did this? Don't you remember? None of that matters, because the fact is that my husband was unhappy at that time. And if I look back at myself at that time, I was not happy either.
Yeah.
We have to be completely honest with each other. And I feel like being defensive about things just gets in the way of healing and growing,
Yeah. It's going to get very interesting right now. And we're going to end in a couple minutes, but I want to tell you this. So I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling really good about myself. I'm feeling really good about the church. I'm feeling really good about my wife. And even though we weren't quite there yet, it was almost like I decided this is just what it is, because my life is feeling really good right now, So
you did lose your job. You did.
Why you got to bring up old stuff? Dang.
As soon as you feel good, I knock you down. But I do have to add that it's interesting that we were doing so good at church, and we were so happy, and you were finally gaining this relationship with God that I had prayed for. I had prayed for that, for you to understand how I felt, and you were finally getting there. You were a leader. It's just interesting because you had finally found the relationship with Jesus that I wanted you to have, that I had prayed for. But it was us being ourselves, being the silly people we are, still being able to love our 90s R&B, watch our shows, be ourselves, and know that Jesus loves us exactly for who we are. And this isn't meant to be, I don't even know how to do a sermon. This is truly how we felt at the time. And meanwhile, Lyndon got laid off. We lost our house. It was 2008. Lost a house, lost every car.
Lost our cable box.
Oh my gosh. They repoed our cable box. That's when I went into crazy laughter. The cable guy came to my house and asked for the cable box. And I just started laughing because I couldn't even cry anymore. We were just losing everything. And we had to move into a rental, another house that was a rental. But yet we had this close relationship with our church, and we had great friends around us. So I knew I could feel in my gut that something big was going to happen in our lives. I thought big Maybe we're going to win the lotto. Maybe we're going to start this great business. I had no idea, but I could feel it because just like we started getting closer as a couple,
Yeah.
really close.
So, and meanwhile, I'm really good friends with our pastor, and him and I are going to the gym together in the morning, and we're working out together, and he's showing me how he just acts like a normal person and talks to, he talks to people at the gym. And I remember guys coming up to him and cussing, and he just had a conversation with them. Like, he met them where they were. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. And I loved where my life was headed. And then
this is the tough part.
Then I get a call, and he just says, "Hey, Lyndon, can you meet me at Starbucks tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I didn't think much of it. It was a little odd to meet him in the evening, but I didn't think much of it. I'm like, we're friends now, so probably wants to hang out and talk about some troubles that he's having or something like that. And I go to the church. We drive to Starbucks together, and we sit at the table, and he sits across from me, and he says, "I have to ask you something." And he goes, "And I don't believe that this is true, and I'm sorry that I have to ask you, but I just have to ask you." And he says, "Are you having an affair?" And I said, "Yes." And we will continue this story on episode 5, part 1, episode 5, part 2.
Yep.
And get into exactly how all of that happened and how we were pretty close to getting a divorce.
Yeah. Something that we never said we would do, but
so that is episode 4. Episode 5 is coming. We appreciate your patience through the holidays and hanging in with us. We also really want to thank you guys for the 5-star reviews, not just the stars, but also the comments that you guys have left us. So, and if you haven't, please do so. We're going to give you everything we got. We want to, use our pain and help others not go through what we went through, because it was the worst time of my life.
Yeah.
And
I'm just so proud of you, because this isn't easy. And when we were doing this before and doing marriage podcast and Periscopes, we always felt that there was a wall, that there was a block from truly helping people, because we weren't completely sharing our whole story. And this isn't easy for Lyndon, although I want everyone to understand we have healed through this. Yeah. We are good now. It's just, this is the first time we're actually telling people. But as far as who we are now, I feel like when we talk about the people we were then, I'm like, who was that woman and who was that man? Because we're two completely different people. And we want you to know that whatever trauma you're struggling with, whatever you're going through in your marriage, there is hope on the other side of that. There is a marriage that if you work for it, if you fight through it, there is a marriage that you didn't even know that you can have. And we know that everybody's circumstances are different. So that's why this is just our story. Our story. Yeah.
And I lived with so much shame for so long. And even when we were doing our podcast before, as you mentioned, I never said what I did. People assumed, but I never actually said the words, because I had so much shame, and I still do. I still have shame for it, but I can't let shame run my life. You can't live in the shadows. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that this is going to help somebody. They always say if 1 million people listen and I help one couple, then we're happy. And honestly,
that's honestly the truth.
If you're the one couple that we can help, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because our pain has a purpose.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this.
Our pain is for a purpose.
Yes. So thank you guys so much for listening. We will have part 5 out sometime next week. And we love you guys.
Love you, and see us next week. Hear us next week.
Hear us next week. Remix your marriage, love hard, and we are out.
Good job. Oh my God. We get so excited to do this. No, I think it's a certain.
Love you guys.
Bye.